What's up, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. This is kind of a follow-up video on a Magic Lantern video that I did, but I was looking at sorry, that was probably super noisy. I was looking at my YouTube Studio comments this morning, and I got two comments. And the reason I'm making this video is because I know how this person feels. Centauria14 says, please do a video on Magic Lantern and how to put it on a camera. So I've already done a video on how to put Magic Lantern on a T5i. I'll put that down, or I'll put a card right there, and then I'll put a link to that in the description. And while I'm talking about the description, I'm also going to put a bunch of resource videos from channels that I watch about Magic Lantern. I don't know what camera they're asking about, but what I want to do in this video is talk a little bit about what Magic Lantern is, why I use it, and then from start to finish we're going to put Magic Lantern back on to the T5i, because I've actually got this listed on eBay but it's not sold and I want to make a couple more videos with it, so I need the Magic Lantern on here anyway. We'll install it after I talk about Magic Lantern and kind of give you a rundown from a beginner's perspective, because that's what I am, is a beginner. And really quick before I get into Magic Lantern, another thing that I do to my Canon cameras is install my custom picture profile. I could not get Cinestyle to work well for me, so I spent like probably 2 weeks putting together a picture profile that is a little bit flatter than anything you can get with the camera. Also wanted that picture profile to be able to use the same LUTs as Cinestyle, so I'll put a link to a Google Drive in the description as well if you want to put that picture profile on your camera. I've already done several videos on that. Just check out my previous videos. But if you're watching this video, you're probably trying to get the best image you can out of your old Canon, and that is one thing that'll help. I'm not a big fan of Cinestyle. But Magic Lantern is not going to be available for all Canon cameras. It's kind of just older ones. When you go to the website here, it's going to give you a quick rundown of what it is. Basically, it's firmware that some really smart people put together to get more features out of the Canon cameras. Back in the day when they started putting video recording on cameras, they kind of just left a bunch of stuff out, and some smart people figured out how to kind of hack the cameras. So there's these things called nightly builds, and they are going to be more stable, and then there's experimental builds. Now me personally, I kind of stick with the nightly builds. So you'll go up to downloads, nightly builds, and then you can see right here if they have firmware for your camera. So you've got the 5D, you've got the T5i, it says every camera that they have firmware for under the nightly builds right there. And then they also have some works in progress right here. Now this SL1 I just used, it worked great, but I tend to stick with these because they are the most stable. And the T3i one actually works great. You get more features than other builds, but anyway, that's a different thing. So what we're going to be looking for is the T5i. That's the camera that we're working on. Quick tangent, the T3 right here, that was one of the first cameras that I had. I had that and an old adapted lens, an old adapted film lens, and the Magic Lantern gave me the ability to really use that camera. And you'll see right here it says test results 6 passed, 1 failed. That's a application that they designed. Once you click on that, it'll tell you what it failed when they ran their firmware on their application. That doesn't mean it's going to brick your camera. That's another thing about Magic Lantern, is people say be careful running that, it might brick your camera. The only time I have ever had any problems like that was with this T5i and the Crop Rec firmware, and I ended up just taking the battery out really quick, putting it back in, reload Magic Lantern, and it didn't break the camera, but I did have it freeze up. So I've never had any issues after using this for a long time. I'd say at least 3 years I've been using Magic Lantern on and off. So don't be afraid to use it, is what I'm trying to say. But we'll go to the T5i because that's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to go down to the installation right there. And it's going to give you directions. A big part of Magic Lantern, running Magic Lantern, is having the correct Canon firmware. Now some of the old Canon cameras, some of that old firmware is really hard to find. Make sure you have the right firmware on your Canon camera. And how you'll find that is put your camera into photo mode and then hit menu on your camera. And on the second to last page there, it's probably too bright for you guys to see, but at the bottom it's going to say my firmware right there. And my firmware is 115, and that's the correct one for this camera. But if it's not, charge your battery to full. Have a full battery before you start this process. Put a new memory card into your camera and then format that new memory card to your camera. How you do that, it's really easy. It's on the settings menu too, right there, and then I just format that card. I can't see it backwards if it's low level or not. Yeah, it's low level. I'll just do the low level. This is going to erase everything on your memory card though, so be warned about that. So now this memory card and this camera will communicate. Then if you need to upload your firmware, you're just going to get that firmware, put it onto your memory card, and then go back to the firmware section and then hit update firmware. That's going to make some sense. That's going to make more sense here in just a minute. But on this T5i, I've got a fully charged battery and I've got a newly formatted memory card with the correct firmware from Canon on this camera. So I'm going to put the memory card in my computer, and then right here where it says Magic Lantern Nightly Build 2008 June 3rd 700D, I'm going to click that and it's going to download to my computer. Then I'm going to go into my downloads, which is going to have, it's going to be pretty messy, so don't judge me. But I'm going to go into my downloads right here, and I double click that zip file, that zip folder. I'm going to highlight the contents of that folder, and then I'm just going to drag it down to the EOS digital part of this memory card in my computer. Don't put it in DCIM, don't put it in the miscellaneous. Put it right on top of the EOS digital. Okay, so I click on my memory card now, and you'll see that Magic Lantern is on the memory card. Now eject your memory card out of your computer, install it back into your camera. You want to set it in photo mode and manual. That's the easiest way to get to your firmware. If you have it in video, sometimes you can't find the firmware. And I'm back on that firmware right there. And then I'm going to just press that and update my firmware. And so don't press any buttons right here. And then just wait for the Magic Lantern build to install on the camera. It happens, it doesn't take that long. Then I'm just going to restart the camera. And now Magic Lantern is on this camera. All I have to do to access it is press the trash can button there. And now I have all of those extra features. So it's really simple to put on there. If you have any issues with your build starting to malfunction after a couple months of use, just reformat your card, put the files back on it. Or sometimes I've had to get a new memory card. It seems like memory cards that I've used on several cameras, sometimes they don't want to operate properly when you do this kind of stuff. But it's really easy, and then you have a lot of extra features in your Canon camera. That's why I like to run Magic Lantern firmware. I like the extra features. I like to be able to use a, I don't have much money in this T5i body, and I can use that firmware, that Magic Lantern, to learn. Instead of having to buy a very expensive camera, I can learn all my basics with a Canon. You have vector scopes, you have focus peaking, zebras, got all kinds of stuff to play with and learn with the Magic Lantern firmware. So hopefully this helped you out with installing Magic Lantern firmware onto your old Canon camera. Again, if it's not available for your camera, there's nothing really you can do. There's some experimental builds out there for like the EOS M2, the 70D, that kind of stuff. I actually had a 70D and I tried to run it and I couldn't get it to run cleanly. So personally, my advice would be to just stick with those nightly builds unless you're advanced, unless you're somebody like some of those channels that I've put in the description of this video who are using Magic Lantern for raw video. Me personally, I haven't had the best luck with that, so that's not why I use it. Again, I hope this helped. I'll see you later.